second here, and as always, I'm just going to check my quality settings before jumping into the stream. We are good. So, I suppose the good news is that I am starting on time, which is especially unusual for a hey Olaf, you made really good time today. So yeah, the good news is that I'm on time. The bad news is that I don't think I've gotten a full night's sleep at all this week. So no tea tonight. It's actually coffee. Part of that is you were here before that. Are you serious? What a good fella. Um, Interesting. So I'm guessing you all can hear the Hollow Knight music, but I can't. Let's see if we can find out what's going on there. Alright, sorry, I'm on time, but apparently not actually prepared. This man will be on soon, you're gonna lurk. Ah, bless your heart, Olaf. Okay, my apologies. I have a suspicion as to what the problem is. The other challenge, of course, is that I might actually have a genuine problem with my headphones, because I've actually kind of dropped them a couple of times. There we go. I think everybody should be able to hear everything still, but now I can as well. All right, sorry about that. I seem to be starting with technical stuff like every broadcast. Oh yeah, No Virtue is playing Going Medieval, I think, right? I used to host No Virtue a lot because of the Stellaris stuff, but I haven't had a chance to watch in a while. So yeah, I mean, I'm making this excuse constantly. Obviously, I'm not failing the Pantheon because I'm tired, or just because I'm tired. I suppose I can never really identify all of that stuff myself. It's obviously a difficult Pantheon, and I'm making incremental progress, but I'm definitely going a lot slower than I wanted to. Yeah, I mean, my intention is to keep going. The one thing I'm a little disappointed in is that I unlocked myself from just doing this every week, and that was sort of in the name of trying to get through the game as quickly as I could. And then I've just had a bunch of stuff, kind of taking my attention. And I also don't think it's all that good of an idea that if I am struggling to get a proper night's sleep, I don't think that time should be spent recording Hollow Knight videos. I think that time should be spent sleeping. So, I need to apologize. I know there are some people who like my stuff, but really do not want to see me do the same fight over and over again. And there are some people who will really like that sort of thing. It is actually fair to say, like, this is the first sort of, like, genuine wall I seem to have hit in Hollow Knight. Even the previous Pantheons, they were difficult. I had struggles on them for sure, but there are ones that I sort of seemed to make some kind of progress each stream, even if it was very minor. This is definitely the one where sort of we've gotten to the collector a few times, and we've just been polishing our play with the collector as opposed to pushing it over the edge. But I still like Hollow Knight, and I'm happy to keep doing it. I suppose, though, that maybe some people who wanted to see me do this game regularly maybe aren't so enthusiastic about it for the lack of progress, so I should recalibrate in terms of where things are going. But one way or the other, I'm fine with Hollow Knight. If it's not working for you, maybe let me know. But we're gonna keep going for today. I'm just trying to think if there's any other details to be talking about before I go in. I'm probably going to have to record a lot of stuff before the 21st. In addition to all the other stuff that I'm recording. Yeah, you know what? I still haven't seen it. I'm learning... I mean, to a certain extent, it's always been hard to keep track of stuff on Steam. Like, there's just so much coming out. But what I'm noticing now is that there's a lot of like really good and really popular stuff that's coming out that's just completely missed my radar. So, for instance, I heard of the title Dyson Sphere program. That's not a, that wasn't something that I didn't. That's not something that I, that was exactly off my radar. But like I knew of it as a game that had come out, not necessarily. Oh, I messed up. Sorry. I gotta. I had a video that I scheduled to go live, but I scheduled it to go live at. I scheduled it to go live on July 2nd rather than June 4th. I don't know what went wrong there, but sorry. I need to make some adjustments. I'm screwing up tonight for sure. What was I gonna say? Yeah, so Dyson Sphere program, like it's a game that I had heard of. It was a game that seemed interesting, but it was definitely not something that I sort of said, okay, I really need to, I really need to fall over myself to experience right now. And it feels like that was a really, really big thing shortly after it came out. And I mean, that's fine. I mean, like obviously everybody's going to everybody's going to kind of have their own take, their own approach to things. But it's a bit of a shame too, right? Because I do kind of want to try a lot of different things. As a quick note, so for the weekend stream, it took me like 2 or 3 attempts to upload this thing to YouTube, and it's actually really hard to get a read in terms of how the processing is going. So I'm looking at this thing right now. It's I think something like a 14-15 hour video, and it has been at 76% processing for I think the past 48 hours. So it's genuinely hard for me to tell whether or not it's just stopped working or if it just really takes that long for YouTube to process this video. So last week's stream is still pending. Okay. I've cleaned up the trouble that I noticed. But yeah, so I think next week, if I am not mistaken, there is the local game dev collective, Dirty Rectangles. I believe they are having their monthly get together, which usually means that I'm not able to stream on the Wednesday. I believe following that, Phantom Brigade is going to get an update for Wednesday, but that's also the release week for Industries of Titan, so I need to figure out how I'm going to balance that out. In addition to the fact that I have a lot of demands in terms of things to do, I actually really want to try and get a lot of Industries of Titan videos done in anticipation of that release. So I may be doing some extra streams, although in practice, Tuesday's already taken for the Elder Scrolls. So really Thursday and the weekends are the most likely times for those things to be happening. So needless to say, additional Hollow Knight stuff on my own time is a little less likely than normal, but maybe I don't need to talk about that right now. Sorry, I kind of got a little sidetracked. Let's just focus on the game at hand. All right, I'm also gonna have a nice big sip of coffee. This is actually pretty fresh coffee too, so I might pause to make some tea a little bit later. But all right, so there's not a whole lot of expectations on this one. This is just me getting reacquainted, but there's no reason not to put effort in. Oh, I messed up twice. really like sabotaging myself. Oops. Unbelievable. Alright, not exactly the cleanest finish, but I'm where I need to be. Like I said, still getting some of the fuzz out. I should be a little more comfortable talking during this. This is supposed to be sort of the refresh part. Actually, one nice little thing that I've done is I've made some decent progress on a blog and then a project that I was due for someone. Now, the problem is that the progress on the blog also involves rewriting substantial portions of it because it wasn't done and it was already at 5,000 words. But I've been pretty happy with that progress. Oops, I was careless. So that was just a miss. That wasn't an effort to try and clear out the enemies. But oop. Oh boy. I thought there was a boulder, otherwise I would have gone in for another hit on him. Okay, that was supposed to be a safety vengeful spirit, so I'm starting to fall apart a little bit. Oh, I tried to be cautious and then I wound up losing everything. So this was a pretty good run, and then I started getting very careless. Ooh. All right. Even though that fell apart in the back there, I noticed that I'm starting to get a little bit better on the panicking. So, generally encouraging. I'm sorry I didn't acknowledge you there a little bit earlier, Talwyn Mossthorn. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for stopping by. So yeah, let's just jump back in and let's see if we can do better. So in that one, I sort of feel like I was doing a better job of using all of the space. One of the problems I notice I've been running into is that I tend to be very attached to the ground. Oops. I do notice one challenge I run into with the collector is that there don't seem to be quite the same... Oh, that's a real pity. There don't seem to be those same opportunities to kind of catch them in a corner and like go to town like the Hive Knight has. Even Elder Who has a few moments where you can really like bounce up and... Well, I'll show you what those look like, but... So like those moments. How many of you thought that I was gonna get hit by those those rings there? Because I sure did. Although those are the nice ones too, because you do learn a thing or two about what counts as a hit. Okay, so that was a pretty good round on Elder Who. I think I'm going to try and do the shout on the collector this time. Oops. Well, my intention was to. Oh, and I made a bit of a blunder there. Well, not a bit of. That was a big blunder. Like, there's no reason I should have done that. Oops, I thought I was gonna dash there, but that's fine. We should be able to recover the health. Well, that's assuming I don't do something silly like that. I got very lucky on that hit. Okay. So again, examples of things that I think are working well here, like some really clear dodges on his grabs. Those are things that I used to sort of struggle with. Oops. So that was careless. I should have been looking up. I normally do, but I didn't that time. So this might be a chance to heal. So that was just a clearing spirit. Again, I'm gonna try and trust the fact that I'm gonna be able to recover that health elsewhere. Oops. Or they'll just fall on top of me. Unbelievable. Oh, all right. So again, I need to start that one. I really stopped looking up. I should be a little disappointed with myself in that. But again, I don't know if this really counts as progress because I feel like I'm not actually getting onto the later phases of him. But I do feel that I am doing a slightly better job of sort of moving throughout the level. And at least for me, that's a pretty big bonus. One thing I'm not sure about is if the game treats individual completion of the bindings different from all of the bindings as once. So for instance, even if I got rid of the nail binding, I have a feeling that I would actually probably do rather well on this run. And then of course I could just do the nail binding on its own. But I've done the other Pantheons with like all of the bindings all at once, and again, it's a chance for me to really master these fights. So I've been a little hesitant to do that, but again, it's potentially an option available to me. I'm just gonna have a little more coffee, and then we'll go into the next run. Here's an interesting question for some of you. I don't know how many of you are data-oriented, but did you know that there is some player data available on Slay the Spire? Oops. Oh, I wasn't paying attention in the right spot. So that would have been a good time for me to try and heal up, but I gotta wait now. Ooh. Not focusing on the right stuff. So we're going a little weak into Elderhu, but I should be able to sort this out unless I make a sort of an immediate blunder, which is not unheard of for me, but this was not the right deal to do. Fortunately, the game did not punish me for it. You know, it occurred to me that some of the times that I think that my dodge isn't working properly, I do have a bit of a tendency to sort of just dash for like locomotion, not to escape an attack. And so it could be that some of these times where I'm getting hit could actually just be that my dodge hasn't generated. There's one little animation that I really like in this, so you can see the little black particles around you. I'm saying particles not as in like the game design sense. I mean just like little black dots around you. And they sort of come in. You'll see them now. It's a nice little touch on that. I've never really felt that I don't have knowledge of when that's up. Of course, whether or not I make the most of that information is another question. So, debatable as to whether or not that did any more damage than the Vengeful Spirit, but again, it's all free damage, so... Oh, that was very sloppy. That was sloppy. Double heat. Okay, obvious chance to heal. So that was a little reckless, but I also got lucky until I dashed into the damage. Not quite sure what motivated me to do that, or that. That one was particularly costly because obviously there I lose all the soul and the health, so it's like the maximum possible punishment for making a mistake. But that, on the other hand, is a well executed dodge, which again, due to circumstance, is irrelevant. All right, that was really, really careless at the end there, but I will I'll finish my coffee. Not quite ready to make the tea. But we'll jump in again. I have a feeling that probably this is a little bit what people who play a lot of roguelike games, what the appeal of the stream is. I suppose a game of like, you know, FTL or something like that's probably going to take a bit longer than these Pantheon runs. But I'm starting to sort of see the appeal of just saying, it's like, you know what, that one didn't turn out, let's hit it again. Actually, one of the drawbacks I ran into about a game like that is, hey, sorry, you're already here, Olaf. I thought you were someone else. Those dastardly colors leading me to believe that I have more people in chat than I do. One of the games that I actually had a big problem with this on was Into the Breach, which I understand is supposed to be quite a difficult game, but I don't know if I ever lost a round on stream for that. I did actually finally lose a game of Into the Breach. But I don't know, like when it first came out, like my first few rounds were all victories. So I was like, oh yeah, this is like a, you know, like I had actually like advised friends. I said, it's like, yeah, this is kind of like a, you know, a little bit of a gentler FTL. You'll take the second high? I was just you celebrating my coffee choices. I know you were advocating for it over my tea on previous streams. But I actually genuinely felt bad about it because like somebody came back to me, was like, "What do you mean this is easier? Like this is harder than FTL. What's wrong with you?" And I was like, well, "I don't know. You know, just you plan out your turn accordingly. Like you know everything that the enemy's gonna do. Just plan out properly, and you're good to go, right?" And they like, I don't blame them. I think they kind of took it as me doing some very weird and incredibly unhelpful flex, but my actual, like, I'm pretty sure those videos are still online. Like if you go far enough in the back. You know, my first, you know, few rounds of Into the Breach was beating the game. Yeah. You know, now I know better. But I wasn't meaning to be a bit of a jerk there. It's actually also possible, like so I know in Industries of Titan I tend to read the patch notes, which I did rather like Brian's assessment of that being a very me kind of touch. But I also think okay, this is going to get a little complicated, but less complicated than I thought. I probably should have got some more hits in there than I should have. Oh no. Alright. I really wanted to hit him with that. Oh, what am I doing? Did I really just take 3 hits in one round? Oh, double aspid, not good. So I gotta find an opportunity to heal, just the right opportunity. This is a little bit more about buying time than getting any big hits in. Obviously I can't... Oh, that was a really good round. Gonna go for the heal. Yeah, it's also possible that Into the Breach has gotten some patches that make it a little more difficult than it was when it first came out. It really didn't accomplish what I was looking for, but... Okay, it's getting a little chaotic here, but we can manage. Oh, shameful. Okay, that was careless, but we can recover. Okay, back to full health. That was a probably careless use of the Vengeful Spirit, but... Okay, that was a little arrogant of me. Oh. So I really wanted to use that for healing, but I was kind of stuck in a corner, so... Okay. Tricky, not impossible. And there we go. So I gotta find out whatever my healing is after the collector. Oh, okay. I've completely forgotten what the God Tamers fight is like. Okay. I think I've earned a little bit of relaxation after the collector. So honestly, the collector might be one of these cases where I should... So my usual principle on a lot of these fights are get them over with as fast as possible, because it is more likely that I'm going to... You know, actually, if memory serves, I think that is how the God Tamer got me in the arena the first time as well. But yeah, I think the Collector might actually be one of those rare cases where going for the marathon rather than the sprint is actually the better plan. Oh! Okay, that sucks. Good lord. I wanted to try and do that without healing. So I didn't really get any readings in terms of what I can do there. Let's just say healing doesn't really seem to be all that much of an option in this fight. So let's get a read on it again. Oh. Oof. Okay, good. I'm trying to see if there's a way for me to get behind that thing when it spits. Oof. Okay. So, this is one of the reasons I'm practicing, because this strikes me as a little bit of a brawl, and obviously with four masks I can't afford that. Oop, wrong way. By the way, this is a really mean fight to do after the Collector. Okay, there's no way to... Oh. No way to dash through him when he's spitting. So in this case, I just need to find the gaps. I'm not sure if I should be looking for any of the healing opportunities inside here. Okay, I deserve that. Oof. That is not the easiest enemy to jump through. Ugh. So clearly that would not take me to the end of the Pantheon there. So I'm going to go for the harder one. I'm probably not going to try the Radiant, but let's at least do the enhanced one. Hey, Night Valiant, we got one run on the Collector in, and then I had a rather unfortunate encounter with the God Tamer. Oof. Ugh. Wow! Alright, for those of you who do not know him, Night Valiant has not finished Horizon Zero Dawn, but I believe has gone through the main campaign of Horizon Zero Dawn and is currently on the, what is it, the Frozen... No, Forbidden West is the sequel. Whatever the DLC. It looks like it's DLC. Anyways, lots of jokes about Canada because it's, you know, covered in ice and whatnot. The thing is that as Canadians, like, there's a lot of things about Canada that, like, they really like to bank on some of their reputations for politeness and stuff like that. I say they. I'm Canadian, so, you know, I should be faulting myself here. There's a lot of really bad things about Canada, too. The Frozen Wilds, thank you. And we do definitely like to coast on our reputation sometimes. But one of the biggest things too, like this idea of like the hardy Canadian dealing with the cold winters, like we're all clustered up against the American border. You know, the population density, once you actually get to the parts of Canada that you think it's like, is not that great. Although I will confess, I have no idea why the hell they decided to put the capital here, but boy, it's cold. Why couldn't they do something sensible, like put the capital in Florida or something? Anyways, Night Valiant is somebody who I have been following ever since I saw them play Lucifer Within Us. I try to do my best. Obviously, so for those of you wondering why maybe you don't see him hosted at the end of the broadcast as often, it's actually partly a function of some of the more AAA-ish stuff, or sort of the stuff that I've sort of not played yet but want to play. And so if he's playing a game that sort of I want to see, I'm not going to spend as much time watching it because I'd sort of like to have the experience myself. I kind of know some of the plot details in terms of Horizon Zero Dawn, so I didn't necessarily mind jumping in on a few of those. And then of course there's the practical consideration that there are a few people who didn't stream who I know who are streaming, and they happen to be sharing some time slots with him. So things like Brian on the Rocks. So you know, you'll notice that every once in a while, maybe not necessarily after a stream immediately, but every once in a while you might be stopping by the channel and seeing me host someone. I definitely am still trying to put that in there, but I would encourage you, just because I'm not necessarily hosting at the end of the stream, like this is one of the reasons why I take the time to do these shoutouts, because the thing is that I'm only ever going to be able to use that host button on one live channel at a time. And so if I have somebody like, you know, Melee Mage, Night Valiant, Miss Ariella, and, you know, Brian on the Rocks, I'm going to, or an Azure Win for that matter. I mean, Azure Win's still been killing it on XCOM 2. You have all of these wonderful options in terms of people playing these games. You get to host one, and I do my best to try and keep it even. But the thing is that the reason I do these shout-outs is that if you follow a channel, you are going to be able to check them out at your leisure. And more importantly, if the game they're playing isn't your kind of thing, then you're going to be able to check them out when they are playing something that's your thing. And that applies especially towards Night Valiant, where, you know, one of the things I've actually noticed over the last week, almost everyone I know who have been streaming this week, have been playing games that used to be PlayStation exclusives. So again, if there's any question in terms of why the Epic Store is paying money for these exclusives, it's for that reason, right? It works. And it's great because of course now we have access to them. But this is one of the things, like one of the reasons why I tend to shout out Night Valiant a lot is that we seem to cover a lot of very similar indie games. And actually he's playing a lot of, wait a minute, you're not playing Horizon Zero Dawn anymore. You were playing Homeworld. My apologies. I got that wrong. But yeah, this is the really big thing. Like, these shout-outs, I take the time to talk about these streamers because I hope I can give you a reason to give them a follow and check them out on your own time. Night Valiant in particular is a really good one because he does tend to stream a little bit after I go live, after I finish streaming. And so he's usually a safe pair of hands to sort of send the channel off to. And I know a lot of you do tend to follow me or do tend to check out my stuff because of the indie games that I play. And so in that case, there's a really nice sort of overlap in terms of the content that's going on. But if it's not clear by now, like I really do hope, I know everybody like says, follows are free. I don't actually want to assign a zero value to the streams. Like it's absolutely true that it costs you nothing to do a follow. But the reason I would advocate for a follow is that any creator is going to want an opportunity to entertain you. That's really all that they can ask. When I take a look at my metrics on Twitch afterwards, it'll show me the number of unique viewers that I have. Obviously, that number is much larger than the number of people who stayed and watched the channel. And that's fine, right? It just means that some people have checked out a stream, wasn't quite for them, and they moved on. And that's that. Like, how can I feel bad about that, right? I'm not gonna fit all of the appeals for everyone. Like I'll never appeal to speedrunner, people who are looking for speedrunning. There's an entire style of Twitch that relies on having a camera. I'm never going to appeal to that. The fact of the matter is I will take these times and stop and just talk instead of play the game. And there's a lot of people who really don't like that. The funny thing is sometimes I'll be doing really well in a game and then I'll stop and talk, and then the people who are coming in to watch specifically the skill at the game get annoyed by that. But that's fine because they're usually really rude about it, so I don't mind annoying those people. But someone should hire me to cast. Yeah, I actually haven't given them my invoice yet because there was one question I had. I should probably just email them an invoice and be done with it. But yeah, I think overall, like I do hope you folks get a chance to check out some of these streamers. It's the overwrought shout-outs are something of an institution here. But again, the intention behind this is always to counteract the culture on Twitch where everything is the best ever, right? It's kind of like when I play Industries of Titan, when I say if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. I hope to give you specific reasons why a broadcaster is worth watching. And I hope you're able to sort of take from that some hints in terms of where that streamer might fit in your overall tastes. But yeah, I did sort of screw up with Night Valiant because I think it was yesterday actually where you were playing Homeworld, and I think it was also Jim the Eternal. I had said that he was playing System Shock 2, where in reality that is a stream he has done in the past. But more recently, God, I don't even remember. Oh, he was playing Disco Elysium more recently. I always feel like such a clown whenever I do that. But anyways, there you have it. I'll actually maybe just take a quick minute here too. Olaf doesn't stream very often, but I suppose it's a little bit like For the Eyes of Sin. I've never actually seen Olaf stream. It's a little bit like The Eyes of Sin, where that's probably even more reason to hit that follow because it's such a special event that you don't get a chance to see. You got to see it until sorry, I just noticed something in there's so much activity going on in the brace yourself chat. Anyways, Olaf, I was going to say, you know, I can't speak from experience, but I am actually looking forward to it. Once in a lifetime opportunity. But I do know Olaf through Miss Ariella, who 1 or 2 streams a year. It's got to be 2 this year, because, you know, one's going to be League and one's going to be Industries of Titan. But yeah, Olaf has been incredibly supportive, not just of me, but of a lot of broadcasters who I like watching. All right, let's do some God Tamer training. The thing is, I'm not confident enough in the Collector that I'm able to sort of deliver the coup de grace, at least with any regularity. But the hope here. Oof. Ah! What am I doing? Yeah, well, this is just it. Like, I'm gonna have very few healing opportunities on this particular fight, so I want to at least get a feel for the. I want to get a feel for the fight, so that when I get past the Collector, which may or may not be something that happens with a lot of health. Oh god, I'm threading the needle here. Unbelievable. I have like 3 reactions to this game. Unbelievable's been coming up a little more often. But yeah, like, obviously I don't want to rest on my laurels on the Collector, but I obviously I don't want the reward for squeaking past the Collector to be completely missing the dynamics of this fight. So I'm really bombing this right now, but I think he's basically gonna hit me from any range. Oop. I need to be taking advantage of the walls a little bit more often, I think. Okay, so this will be really instructive. Let's see how long I can last in the current fight, just because I only have 1 health. All right. Let's do 1 more of those, and then we'll jump back into the Pantheon. Because again, I can't ignore the freshness of the Collector fight either. The biggest thing is that if I don't know, so the reason why the Collector was such a devastating problem to run into. All right, that was foolish. The reason the Collector was so difficult to deal with. You know what? Maybe there's another version of this fight where I take out the beast first. I think in reality it's just going to be targets of opportunity. That was almost the end. Oh. You know, I'm going to do a couple more of those. Yeah, the real, like, the really tough part with the Collector was that it was stopping me from knowing what any of the future fights were, so at least now I've got something else that I can practice with. Okay, that was a little careless. I'm definitely trying to get a pattern of sort of 3 hits of magic if I can. Ooh. I am not appreciating how tough that combo of the roll and the jump is. Oh, that was the wrong way. Oh god, yeah. So I'm kind of getting the idea of where I need to be in this fight. This is like a really, really sloppy run. I don't know if this is just because it's practice or because I'm not in the right frame of mind for it, but... Oops. Okay, so this is definitely not where I want to be on this section. Another big thing out of this is just finding the patterns to escape the, escape some of the tricky spots, like where I'm stuck in a corner. What was that? Yeah, it was a bad run. I'm feeling really unfocused on this, but let's, in this case, I actually don't mind playing around a little bit. I read John Cleese's book on creativity. Now, it's not, it's actually not, I've read 2 books on creativity recently, and the Cleese book is actually not the best of them. It's all right. Like, it's not a bad book by any stretch of the imagination. I just felt that the other book handled the subject maybe not even necessarily better, but in a way that was a little bit more in line with, like, it was presented in a way that I found very receptive. Or sorry, it was presented in a way that worked well for me. Maybe I should say better. Was receptive doesn't actually make that much sense. But he definitely stressed a lot of the idea of, like, just not exactly loafing, but sort of like, don't rush to get to a conclusion. Oh, actually, I wonder. I'm gonna see if I can get away with a pogo strategy here, because I think most of the stuff that will hurt a pogo is telegraphed. Funny thing is, all the damage I took was not when I wasn't pogoing. But yeah, so, like, I don't feel like this is, like, so if you were to ask me for an honest assessment, I don't actually think this is super productive. There's obviously a lot of really careless moves that I'm making inside of this, and yet I actually think this is not... I have a feeling that I'm actually probably going to pick up some stuff that I didn't before. I was a little bit better at the pogo before, so let's see if I can... Alright. So if I pogo, it's got to be on the beast. Okay, so the pogo strat seems to be you do it on the beast, and you make sure that you avoid the God Tamer. Okay. So maybe the next one to do is actually don't worry about the God Tamer at all. If it feels like they're going to be threatening me, use the dodge and just reset the pogo. Not the most auspicious start, but there you go. Ugh. Oof. Unbelievable. Oh no, I had a nice big reserve of, I had such a big reserve of souls. Alright, I think there's potential in this. I get so mad every time. Ah, I'm calling shenanigans on that one. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know they could bounce off of the wall like that. So this, I think, normally would be where I try and experiment with different healing options. But I'm actually liking this idea of not doing any healing during this fight. I feel like I'm learning a little bit more. Okay, so the problem with the pogo strat is that I haven't actually taken down the God Tamer, which is something that I have been able to do on previous runs, and yet I still think there's probably something to this approach. I gotta remember the landing. Don't know. Alright, I'm definitely not going to try Radiant on that because we're going to be here all night if I do that, but I have something of a game plan. Now again, we still need to get past the Collector, right? The one thing that I didn't get out of that was a way to heal. I think I'm going to just play that by ear if I do it at all. At the very least, I shouldn't get, like, owned the second I come into the fight there, so... I saw that coming straight for me, I didn't do anything about it. I kind of need to heal here now. Oh, or just die. So one of the things I'm trying to do here is just get past my bad habits of relying on heals. Cool boy. So this one I definitely need to be doing some healing just because of some of the careless hits. That was very bad. I don't know what I thought I was going to accomplish doing that, but... That was not the smartest heal I've ever done, but it worked, so I wasn't paying attention. So I've kind of broken the rule of try not to heal. Oof. Oh, I'm calling shenanigans on that spike hit. Trying to be patient with Elder Who and wait for the right moment to heal. Oh, what was that? The most embarrassing ones for me are definitely when I actually get hit by the body of Elder Who. Alright, so I got 2 health to recover. Hopefully we can still get a full soul vessel. I shouldn't be wasting those hits like that. Okay, not great because I'm not going to be able to do the extra hit on the collector, but again, if I'm so confident with the collector, I should be able to get through it. A little careless, but so I almost got caught by the collector there, but I'm getting a little bit better at the dodges. Okay, that was again carelessness, but we'll recover. So of course I'm conscious about wanting to be at a higher health level than I was on the God Tamer, which is going to be harder as we move through the fight, but not impossible. Okay, that was just me trying to take advantage of the opportunity. So basically, the standing order here is don't take advantage of a heal unless you feel really confident in it. Okay, that was careless, but... oh, doubly careless. Okay, not great. I think I can recover this. Ooh, I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. And got hit by one of those aspids. Okay, that was not the best collector run that I've done. I am still kind of relying on a few of these. I think a few of those heals I'm sort of relying on good fortune. And I'm back in the habit of not checking what's falling on me. I'll also just say, like, overall, my reactions feel very sluggish today. Like, from the start of this stream, I think that's been true. The thing is that, like, if it's a physical thing, there's nothing I can do about that. So it's just, you know, play the hand I've been dealt, basically. And if it's a motor skills thing, then, you know, I'll just stream it again another day and I'll be in a better position. But that doesn't mean there isn't stuff that I can't learn from these fights for now. Oops. I don't know why I thought dashing would have helped me there. And that was... oh, wow, that was a really careless trio. So I really just wanted space there. Unfortunately, I kind of built a set of problems for myself again. Okay. Again, sloppier than what it really should be, but we managed to get through, and Elder Hu should hopefully be where I get my healing. If I'd had a little more presence of mind, I should have hit him with the shout when I was just standing there waiting for the attack to finish. And again, the main reason about vocalizing this stuff is just to try and, like, make it concrete in my mind. It doesn't mean that I'm going to suddenly do some completely optimized run, but being able to say it aloud sort of helps me, you know, it kind of helps me keep track for myself of where I have room for improvement, and particularly when I say the same thing over and over, that's hopefully an indicator of cases where I'm, you know, not quite living up to my expectations. Man. And with any luck, that turns into recovery. Okay, so we're starting off with some souls to hit the collector with. Again, the first round on the collector really isn't where I'm running into the problems, but it's still nice to have that in the. Still nice to have this in the bank. Going to be fire. I wanted to try and get through the fire, but cool. I hesitate a little bit in terms of which one to go after. That's going to have consequences later. Oops. That was just not a good step. Okay, I might need to do a clearing. Maybe not. That was just for safety. I'd like to heal, but not, like, not at the expense of having a floor full of enemies ready to kill me. So this is a great example of a time that I'll try and get a heal in. Unfortunately, circumstances did not conspire to help me out there. Oh. No, no. Ah, sorry. I thought that was a dash, not a jump. So this is definitely one of these cases where I feel the battle's running away from me. But the answer to that is just to say I don't accept this battle running away from me. Oh, man. And to sort of build my turn to capitalize on opportunities that come up. So I am going to go for my 4 masks, just knowing what's coming up. Or at the very least to not die. Okay. That's just a safety clear. Okay, it's going to get quite difficult coming up. Yeah. I wanted to clear the Aspid in terms of, wanted to try and clear the Aspid. So yeah, that thing kind of ran away with me, a little bit before. But, I don't know. I actually feel, so I have had quite a bit to drink, like, as in fluid intake, not alcohol, before the stream to just try and wake myself up. I actually kind of need to go to the bathroom. So it's going to be an earlier break. I'm also going to try this again, so I apologize to those of you who are going to be affected by this. But I am going to see, I want to try something with the ads again, so I apologize. I am going to be running ads, and I'm sorry if that's really offensive to you. I'd love to know if somebody gets hit by this. But there's something on my end that I'm testing out. So I'm going to be getting up and like just getting a glass of water, going to the bathroom, all that sort of stuff. And I actually encourage you to do that, especially if there's ads running. There's nothing here for you. So it says it's 1 minute. Oh, it's already running. All right, those of you that aren't seeing the ads, this didn't turn out as I was planning. Anyways, I am gonna just get myself sorted out, and I will see you all in a little bit. All right, so again, my apologies to those of you. One thing that I am a little curious about, so I'm going to keep this sign up just because my kettle's not done boiling, and rather than run through the two of them. Actually, I guess that's one problem. Like, so the problem I have, here, let's talk about Twitch for a little bit. The way this gets set up, so the incentive for me for running ads is to stop the pre-roll. Especially when, you know, somebody hosts or somebody's just checking out the channel for the first time. Like, nothing sucks more than getting hit with a pre-roll. And one of the ways that Twitch gives you some control over that is if you do a 1-minute ad break. So I actually kind of like that. I do kind of like that format, just in the sense that I think, you know, being able to say to someone is like, okay, you know, we expect there to be some advertising on this site, but we are giving you an option under which you can control when your viewers are seeing these ads. I'm kind of okay with that. You know, you're sort of given an option to opt out of pre-roll. What I don't like is that basically the ad breaks are every 21, like you only get immunity for pre-roll for 21 minutes. Now, like imagine I did a 1-minute ad break every single time I finish one of those Pantheon runs or something. That, I mean, maybe 21 minutes is a little excessive, but like you can clearly see, like at that point you are, in order to prevent people from being annoyed by pre-roll, you are like slamming everyone who's watching your broadcast. And so in reality, I really think the way that Twitch has set this up is to basically maximize the number of times that broadcasters are enabling ads while still effectively making people get hit by pre-roll. And so it's a system that in principle works very well, and in practice, I think, fails to deliver on the actual promise. And then I have moments like this where basically I've wasted like 5 minutes of that immunity just talking. But my kettle is boiling, so I'm going to let the tea steep while I play, and then, you know, hopefully I'll be a little more caffeinated. I don't know, I'm just feeling a little woozy, and it's the one hour mark. So I'll be back in just a second, and I'm not going to run ads again, obviously. But there's actually another thing that I was testing with that, which I don't know if I quite want to say on broadcast yet, but if it works out, I will be sure to let you all know. So I'll be back in a second. It's not that big. It's nothing too exciting, Olaf. Sorry, I gotta set my timer. Because I'm sorry for the time that it's taken me to get back in. Like I said, it's I've really, I'm not 100. So if I'm completely honest about this, I'm not 100% sure about this choice. But I committed a really long time ago. Hey, C McLaugh. Man, everybody's talking about the mystery test. I don't even know if I'm actually going to see what I need to from Twitch on this. But anyways, thank you very much. Let me just take a second to zap all that. That's a 5-month streak. I didn't even notice that, so thank you very much. Especially when I am flogging the Pantheon of the Sage and regressing. All right, let's just jump in. I'm gonna have to pull my leaves out of my hot water, but we'll make it work. Tried to do too many things at once. I got hit by the exact same thing that I did last time, so I'm going to try healing for the next two. Okay. Oh, man. I've learned that I need to be careful on dodging those bees, obviously. Whoa! I don't know what's been happening. So this seems to happen every... What time is it? 8:39. Okay. Some of you remember... Actually, sorry. This is still... I still have my taskbar up. Okay, that's better. This seems to have happened every week. So for whatever reason, there seems to be this case where my game suddenly tabs out. This is a little inconvenient, but we'll make do. I suppose it's better on this fight than any of the some of the others that I could be going against. But that was doubly awful. What am I doing? Okay, let's see if I can get myself back up to full masks at least. Alright, not a bad recovery. I've got 10 seconds before my tea is done, so... 4, 3, 2, 1... This is going to be the collector. Oh man, actually I did better on the collector with coffee. So let's see if I do even better with tea or if it's the reverse. My goodness. That's hot. I'm used to having lukewarm tea during the middle of a broadcast. Okay, Asgrid's going to be a bit of a threat, but... It would have been nice to collect the soul off the Balder, but it's, I'm learning to just sort of neutralize threats as the opportunity comes up. Like I said, the marathon attitude to this fight as opposed to the sprint that I normally employ. Oof. That was just carelessness. That is a pretty treacherous corner, though. Okay, I just walked into that, so I only have myself to blame. So that was really reckless, but it turned out, so I'm feeling particularly smart. That was not so smart. So the problem here is I'm not really doing a lot of damage to the collector. And I'm down to 2 masks, so I am going to try and focus on healing, but particularly now, but... Alright, I got hit by that opening. Yeah, so overall that was not a good collector run. This tea is very flavorless after the coffee. Okay, I deserved that hit. I'll admit, some of the silly stuff I've been doing, I kind of want to say it's like, you know what, I'm just calling it for Hollow Knight tonight and I'm playing Industries of Titan. I'm not gonna do it. I really wanna force myself to go through. Oh yeah, sorry, that was the thing I was gonna talk about. I'm gonna force myself to go through it because I'm not gonna get better if I only do it, you know, during the easy times. But that's actually something on streaming. Like a really long time ago, I committed to broadcasting pretty much no matter what. Like, I'd give myself holidays. I would, you know, I treat it seriously. But like basically, unless there was an internet outage that prevented me from broadcasting, a sickness that would keep me from, you know, from being able to broadcast. Like, so there have been a couple of times where I'm reduced to a whisper, and at that point, I'm just not gonna broadcast. But generally, to just make sure that no matter what, I broadcast. That's one thing I've tried to do. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether or not this is the right call or not, because obviously there are ways that can become a really unhealthy attitude. You know, like, I don't know if I would have gotten more sleep if I had just said, you know, maybe no to broadcast this week until I fix my sleeping schedule. Because the other thing is that it could just suddenly become, you know what, I'm not going to stream on a regular schedule anymore. That's a really easy attitude to get into. Sorry, I'm not paying attention. But on the other hand, like, Twitch is not the most important thing anybody's gonna do. Even people who like make a living on Twitch. Oh, good lord. Twitch is not gonna be the most important thing that they do. Well, I guess unless they make it such, but I don't know. Like I kind of feel like we probably should be aspiring to greater things. I like broadcasting on here, but I don't want this to be my life's work. I'm not even going to try to get a hit. Alright, I'll always just have to put health... Yeah, so... that's kind of one of these broadcasts now. It's sort of like, you know... Given my choice, I probably wouldn't have been broadcasting today. On the other hand, particularly for this Pantheon, where I felt that the progress is sort of stagnated for the last few streams, I can definitely see how Hollow Knight would like remain incomplete for a year. Like, think about XCOM 2, right? We're still in the middle of an XCOM 2 run. That I don't think most people, like, who are regularly watching were even watching the broadcast when we started that thing. Like, there's been a turnover in regular viewers. I'm still gonna, like, pick it up from where, you know, where we left it off, but, you know, again, like, I just sort of know... I know enough about kind of the dynamics of how these things go that, there is something to be said for sticking it through. This, by the way, I think is true for projects as well. Like, it's super easy to start projects. Because that's the fun part of it, right? Like, just coming up with all these ideas and moving ahead. What's hard is to actually do the work. To actually be confronted with failure and the fact that, you know, it's easy to... Like, so, here's a great example. I'm not going to say who, because I didn't really have a conversation with this developer about like how public I could make the work. But let's say a reasonably... Okay, keeping in mind that whenever we're talking about my stream, we're always going to be talking like my standards. I would say reasonably well-known game developer. Let's say a game developer where if I were to mention them in this broadcast, even with, let's say, people who are just checking out the channel, you know, for a lark, right? One of those sort of unique viewers who decides, you know, not quite for me, I'll go check out someone else. And hi, by the way. No hard feelings. I have got a very unique style, which isn't for everybody. Oh, I almost got lucky there. Ah. I was trying to thread the needle and I lost... Ooh, I lost a lot there. But yeah, anyways, with those standards in mind, I'd say probably a developer you would have heard of. And I took a look at some of their sales data, and they were pretty happy with the work, but they sort of said, you know, the one thing that developers really want to know is this, and it was essentially sort of, how do you forecast sales, right? So consider some of this is going to be in a blog, so consider the problem that a developer runs into. You're going to be committing resources, financial resources, and potentially, if it's your first game, sort of time, sweat equity, I think some people call it. And it's potentially on a project that's going to take like 2 years to realize. And the question is going to be, can you self-finance this thing? Or do you need to find external sources of funding? So in this case too, it might just be the question of your next project. It may not even necessarily be your first project. But you know, based on what we're seeing for this game here, do we have a reasonable expectation that we're going to be able to keep the lights on while we develop our next game? Or do we need to find a way to keep this thing going? I mean, lots of different companies have different ways of answering that question. Some take contract work to work on sort of other people's games. I don't know if this is like a well-known thing, but there's plenty of game developers who do not make a living off of the games that they've released. That the way that they finance the games that they release is to work for larger studios who have work that needs to get done. And you know, they build a certain component of a larger game, and then they turn some of that money into paying the staff to make the game they want to release. Which I actually don't think is necessarily a bad model. Although interestingly enough, when Kid Fox did that, that was apparently the one time that they had to do layoffs that weren't related to. Like just in terms of being able to afford things. I think some of that contract work falling through is the one time that they've had to let someone go where it wasn't sort of a voluntary separation. So there you have it. But yeah, anyway, so like this is a very interesting but very hard problem. This is the whole reason why I got into economics, which is like, how do you predict the future? It turns out predicting the future is really difficult. That's also very important. So I'll admit, actually, I've not been the most diligent on this project, and that's partly because the methods that are so I kind of sought some of this data from game developers originally because I think that the problems that data analysts in game development face are actually very similar to the kinds of problems that you might see macroeconomists face. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. You've got so let's say we're trying to come up with some kind of a tax policy. This is policy analysis here. And you're going to say, I want to put a tax on, I don't know, I think last time I said this was beef consumption. People are currently eating, X pounds of beef, so, we'll say we'll put $1 per pound tax, so we would expect X dollars in revenue from this tax. And I think everybody knows, there is one number that you, like, there might be disagreements in terms of how much that tax will actually generate. I think everybody knows the one number that's not going to be, and that's going to be X. Because, of course, if you see a tax on beef, you're going to buy less beef. You're going to get chicken. You're going to get, I don't know, Beyond Meat. You're going to, and there's any number of other products that you're going to substitute them. And specifically, the reason people are going to be eating less beef is because of that tax and the fact that the cost has gone up. Oh, man. So, one major contribution to the literature that dealt with this, I probably would have done better if I wasn't trying to explain policy analysis. One really interesting contribution is what's known as the Lucas critique. Now, some of you might know this as the gun that only shoots left, because what tends to happen is that you'll have these social programs that people want, and then people will bring up the Lucas critique to say that the social program isn't going to produce the outcome that you want, and then when it's something like a tax cut or whatever, well, maybe tax cut's not a great idea. Well, no, I guess you could apply it to the tax cut as well. So I'm just going to have a minute to finish the thought, and then we'll carry on. But yeah, like basically the thought is usually that this tends to get directed towards policy recommendations of a certain stripe, which I actually don't know. I haven't seen the history of it enough to say whether or not this is true. But basically, the idea here is that people are going to respond to so Lucas of Critique basically says that when you run a sort of reduced form regression, so like when you do sort of the statistical analysis on past behavior, you're observing people who are playing under a certain set of rules. And what policy analysis is, pretty much by definition, is changing the rules of the game, right? So I eat a certain amount of beef under this policy regime. We're analyzing what the effects of a tax on beef is going to introduce. But the analysis that I was doing was of a world without this tax. The other example that I've heard given of this critique is that, you can say, okay, Fort Knox has never been robbed, therefore we can save money by removing all of the guards from Fort Knox. What do you think's going to happen to Fort Knox? And this kind of led to this idea of sort of structural modeling, where you are, you're coming up with sort of this theoretical model in terms of what consumers' behavior is going to be, and then you will estimate with that in mind, and you're going to get a more accurate picture in terms of what the response to your policy change is going to be. The reason why I bring this up is that I actually think that this is a line of thinking. So this is something that economists have been dealing with in order to try and do their model. Like basically, you want to try and come up with some kind of a credible analysis to be able to say that you have identified sort of a causal effect, or that basically you are, when you're making these recommendations, that you have accounted for sort of these knock-on effects in the ideal case. Sometimes people just want to get a policy pushed, and they'll put whatever model they want in, and they're not going to care about these problems. But ideally, if you're doing something serious, you want to actually make a statement about the world as it is. And the reason why I bring this up for games, my original interest in all of this was, I actually think this is a problem that data analysts in video games face, which is some of the most interesting questions that video game data is going to present them is a case where the players are responding to the game in a certain way, right? They're always equipping this gun, or they're always equipping, or they're always going to this part of the map or whatever. And of course, what game designers are going to be doing is they are going to be changing the rules of their game in a literal sense here. I was using rules of the game metaphorically, but in this case, the policy change that they're doing is quite literally changing the conditions under which the players are playing. And so it would seem to me that this approach is really appropriate to analysis. And this is the original reason why I wanted to look up some game data. But I think the big challenge that I ran into is that what I'm also describing is the fun part of game design for game designers, that maybe they don't necessarily want the nerds to come in and do this data-driven approach to it. Slay the Spire, from what I understand, actually did a lot of data-driven design. But they don't necessarily want... don't want some nerd coming in and ruining their fun. What they do want to know, though, is, am I going to be able to keep the lights on while I develop my dream game, or am I going to have to find another source of financing while we get this thing done? And obviously, being able to commit resources on something that is, the return is driven by taste, and not just taste, but taste potentially 2 years in the future, is really difficult to do. So what I've been, the challenge is that I'm equipped for sort of the, very micro-heavy, policy analysis sort of drive. I'm not really good at time series and macro and things like that. So I've been reading a whole bunch of books on time series analysis and just generally trying to come up with an answer in terms of reasonably how close can you get to actually forecasting sales. Because the other thing is I don't want to just, I can fit a model. I have already fit several models that actually do a really good job of predicting as in forecasting, not predicting as in fitting sales. But I also know, because essentially those models are relying on a baseline of sales, that, there's sort of a number that is your best guess in the absence of other information. That's actually not really informative, because it's going to be very misleading when you start getting to things like discounts and whatnot. So I finally had a little bit of a breakthrough on that project. I can't even remember why I originally brought it up. But it's been interesting. It's been interesting to work. But what has been really telling on that one is this afternoon, well, probably early evening, after I was done work, I was trying to come up with all of the historical Steam sales, right? So things like the Steam Winter Sale, the Autumn Sale, and I was trying to come up with a list of all of the sales that have happened in the past. And I couldn't find a database of it. I had to do it all by hand, and it was getting really tedious. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to get this all done at once, but I am going to do another year, because that's going to be another year that I don't have to do moving forward. And if I don't give myself the discipline to be able to... get this one small bit done, then I'm probably never going to do it. And again, right, you can start off with... So think of this journey that we've gone on to, right? A name, quote-unquote, developer giving me pretty open access to their sales data. Obviously not the first developer to do that. But needless to say, a really cool data set to work with that not everybody necessarily has access to. Instead of, it's not the first idea that I was going to work with, and it involves a certain degree of learning. But the motivation of this should be, I'm working with data that not everybody has access to, rather than, oh, this isn't exactly what I had in mind. And so again, I've actually got 4 or 5 different ideas about how to do that forecasting exercise and how to come up with some reasonably credible sort of inferences for I'll say the client, although they're not actually paying me. This is kind of pro bono work that I'm doing. When they're making Fortnite money, I'll ask for my payment. Oops. But yeah, I don't know. Where I was trying to go with all of this is just these things kind of feed into one another, right? Sometimes you don't feel like streaming. Being able to get up and stream regardless, and ideally do the best show you can, right? Some days it would be nice if the viewership was a little bit higher than what I see, but I can complain about that, or I can be happy that people are still paying attention even when it's not my best day, and keep moving forward. I can say, oh, I really wanted to look at, player data, not sales data. Sales data is business stuff, and I'm a creative soul. I don't do business stuff, right? But if I'm able to come up with some insights that mean that developers are able to plan better for the future, and that they're able to, they're able to sort of realize these projects, or basically be able to, scale their projects accordingly, right? Like maybe the next project isn't this big ambitious, I don't want to say MMO, because like how many indie MMOs do you know of? But it's not going to be sort of the magnum opus. It's going to be something a little more small scale, just while they recharge their batteries after a maybe a more disappointing release. Being able to give them a picture of how that happens is something really good, right? Potentially something that can be shared with other people as well. And more importantly, it's working outside of my comfort zone, so it's probably something that I'm going to learn a little bit more from than just applying all the stuff that I've done with a more micro perspective. Definitely say this is very interesting. Yeah, I mean, because it's sales data, I have no idea how much of this I'm going to be able to share with people. But the thing is that like sales for an individual company is one thing, right? I wouldn't necessarily be able to share like even the parameters that I estimate from that. It's kind of debatable. That was a really bad vengeful spirit. Even that's potentially something that may not be, may not be shareable. But the fact that I've put the time in, right? That I've looked at this like sales data, like there's a ton of like little details in the data set that I'm like, oh, I'd really love to do something with this. And then I'm like, oh, but I have no idea what on earth I'm doing with most of this stuff. Like, I've like simple stuff. For those of you who know time series stuff, like I've never had to do an ARIMA model before. As it is, also, for those of you that know this stuff, I'm not going to try and explain it because I'm in the middle of a collector fight. But like, it seems like in most of these cases, it seems like you can rely on stationarity for Steam sales. So the I in ARIMA doesn't mean anything for those, for that model. But I think it's really fair to say that there are seasonal effects. I think trying to estimate a model based on just past sales, I think you can come up with something that'll fit. I think it's also going to be like people who claim that they can predict the stock market based on previous prices. Like, I'm not going to say they haven't fit a model. I'm just going to say I don't think that model's going to make you any money. Obviously, I just use a bunch of technical terms there, so if you don't know what any of those mean, that's fine, because when I can publish some of this stuff, I will explain all of it. But again, like, it's really... One thing that is that I know there are clearly companies like EA and Ubisoft have to have departments making estimates in terms of how well a given game is going to sell. Like, I just don't see how you can do business at that level without an expectation in terms of what a given game is going to sell. I also think that those developers have, like, they all have their own storefronts. Like, they're able to get an idea in terms of how people respond. Like, so the idea of, like, elasticity of demand for games. How, basically, elasticity of demand would be how people respond to sales. Or discounts. That's a whole other... Like, that's a question I'm really interested in. And again, I have a little bit of data, but the biggest problem that I have is that most of the time that when I'm working with these developers' sales data, their decision to discount the game is not something that's just kind of randomly assigned. It's usually in response to how the game has sold before. I actually think the developer who's holding the most interesting data set in terms of people's responses to sales is Tynan Sylvester, or his company Ludon Studios. This is the developer of RimWorld. RimWorld, for the longest time, never went on sale. Now when it goes on sale, 10%. Like, last 2 or 3 sales, it's been 10%. And I think, like, he is probably sitting on the most interesting data set in terms of a highly desirable game and how long people are willing. Like, it's basically a big game of chicken that's being played right now, right? Essentially what Ludon Studios is doing is completely deprogramming Steam users from the way that they're used to buying games. There's an entire generation of people who do not believe in paying full price for a game. And effectively, Ludon Studios has said, if you want to play RimWorld, you're going to have to pay full price. And it's like, now it's like, okay, you know, we've been waiting years for a discount on RimWorld. Like, surely now, after years, it's going to get a discount, right? And Ludon's been like, okay, first discount, 10%. Like, I want to know, like, was there just this avalanche of, like, people just waiting for, like, any discount number? Like, if it had been 5%, they would have hit it. If it was, like, 1%, they would have hit it. It was just, they wanted to get an idea that they were buying it for less than full price. Or is there a bunch of people where it's like, you know, it doesn't actually matter what the price is for them. It matters that they see like a 50% in front of it. At which point, like, would RimWorld just slowly start raising its price until it's, you know, it just doesn't expect to sell copies on a normal day. And instead, it just waits for the 50%. Oh, I was way too early with that. It just waits for, you know, people to buy it at what the quote-unquote true price is, accounting for. By the way, I don't ever think that RimWorld would actually do that, but just kind of an example, right, in terms of how people respond. Now, not a lot of games can necessarily afford to do that sort of thing, but it's really clear. And by the way, they're not the only game to have done that. There was a game called... Oh man, I didn't realize the Baldur was sitting there. The Castle Doctrine, for a really long time, did that approach. But it's also worth remembering that the Castle Doctrine was a multiplayer game, and the player base vanished based off the fact that the game was never being discounted. So in that case, the experiment failed. It was arguably something that was not beneficial to the project as a whole, because it was a multiplayer game that had no players effectively. Oh man, I'm doing so bad with these vengeful spirits. But again, potentially that developer is sitting on a really interesting database of how players respond to sales or lack of sales. But unfortunately, in the case of the Castle Doctrine, there's this confounding factor of, because it's a multiplayer game, the value of that game is going to be adjusted based on I gotta clear up. Oh wow, I don't know what hit me, but I was not expecting that. I gotta try and get a heal. Oh boy. Sorry, I'm really unfocused. But the other thing that's neat too, so one of the things that's most exciting about potentially being able to forecast sales, even if it's on a short run, so like the ideal here would be to say, within, let's say, 2 or 3 months of a game being released, we'd be able to come up with a reasonable forecast, you know, within a range of what the 2-year performance is going to be, right? Nobody's looking for precision here. They're looking for something that they can make a business decision based off of. But it does seem to be that if you give me the entire history of a game's sales, I did make one model that actually seemed to be pretty good at identifying what tomorrow's sales would be. So there's a really interesting prospect in there, because depending on how good your predictions are, let's say a week out. So let's say you want to do something like change your like capsule image for, so like, you know how there's a picture for a game on a Steam page. There's a lot of talk about what the most effective sort of art style is, or what the most effective type of capsule image is. Like, you know, sometimes it says, well, it should show people, or it should show, you know, the title in big letters, or I think there was even one where they said, here are the most appealing colors that people always click on. Like, there's just lots of different types of you know, recommendations that people make. Now, Steam doesn't have A/B testing for this stuff. Some people have actually suggested do advertising on like Facebook and Google and things like that, which do actually have, or Reddit, which does have an A/B function inside of it. And you can make some judgments that way. And then the assumption here is that people's behavior is going to be the same as in the case of Steam. But there's an interesting prospect here, which is if you can make a reasonable case that you would be able to say, you know, a week out, that you can have a certain degree of precision in terms of what the sales for the game were, or like what the click-through rate or something like that is. What that means then is that right now what people are usually doing on Steam is they're looking for a relatively stable period of time. So when there's like not a big change to the storefront happening, or, you know, or there's not a big sale going on or something like that, they change the capsule and then they change it back and they sort of say, okay, how well did it do? And the problem is that's always going to be noisy, because, you know, what if your competitors happen to put a discount on? You know, do you know who your competitors are? Do you know what people are getting recommended inside of their feed? Did Steam change the algorithm and that hasn't been identified until several months later? So what you can do is, if you have that forecast, again, it's a reasonable, you feel very confident in terms of the ability to do that. You can run that test, and instead of comparing it against maybe a previous period or whatever, you can sort of say, okay, you know, here's what the run would have been. Now, again, that's not going to change. Like, if Steam changes the algorithm, obviously your model's not going to be valid anymore. So it doesn't always fit in every one of those scenarios. But that's another example where even if I don't wind up with the holy grail, which is, you know, based on a few months of data, I'm able to give you an idea in, you know, 2 years whether or not you're going to be able to self-finance your next title. Being able to enable some analysis like that is a potential useful side effect out of some of this stuff. And again, being willing to do the hard work, like being willing to say, it's like, okay, I'm just going to have to do some of this tedious work about finding out when the Steam sales were, because being able to quantify, you know, a sale is happening on, like, so here's an example of a problem that's interesting. Steam can have a sale going on, and that's going to draw people to the storefront because there's a deal. A developer may not participate in that sale. So the question is, do people buy more or less in that circumstance? You can say that people would buy fewer copies of the game because their alternatives on a relative basis are less expensive. So, you know, in relative terms, the game costs more. Of course, nobody goes to Steam and says, 1 video games, please. Like, if you want to play Crypt of the Necrodancer, like, what's your alternative? I don't even know if there are any other games like Crypt of the Necrodancer, except maybe like Cadence of Hyrule, and that's on Switch, so you can't get that on Steam. So, you know, you've got the effect of more people coming onto Steam, which potentially raises the number of sales, and then you've got the fact that competing games or other games are lower, and so the relative price of your game has increased, basically. And which of these effects dominates is an open question. So being able, you know, that's why I actually take the time to build this data. I'm going through it. I think I've got from 2015 to 2021. And so far as I can tell, Steam sales go back to 2007. So fortunately, they do more today than they did in the past. So it gets easier the further back I go. But being able to identify those Steam sales, the more individual seller information that I get, the more we can start answering those questions about, does the fact that, like, if Steam is doing an event, is that a tide that lifts all boats, or do you actually need to participate in the sale? Because the other thing that's interesting about that is that you also get into these ideas of, is it smart to more heavily discount your game during an event because your competitors are also sort of leveling out their prices? Or is the fact that there's this additional activity going on, does it actually make sense for you to give a stingier discount than those cases where... Sorry, I say stingy. I mean, it's obviously game developers should be charging what they think is appropriate for the game. But, you know, like if maybe you would have done a 30% discount on your game, maybe you do a 20% one during the Steam sale because you know people are already in a buying mood and they don't need as much of an incentive. Whereas if you're doing sort of the marketing on your own, if you're effectively sort of relying on the Steam wishlist functions, like maybe you need to give an added incentive to pull the trigger on the sale, and so you go for a steeper discount. Another question would be, if you put the game on sale at like 30%, does it make it harder to sell the game at 20%? Like if you just do one deep discount, do people refuse to buy the game at a higher price? Because of course at that point that would suggest that developers should be really reluctant to put that heavy discount. Also, I realize this is probably the times where people are like getting scared of the fact that I'm doing some of this work, because it's like, wait, does that mean I'm going to have to pay more for games? And I'm like, you will have to pay a fair price for games as a result of that. I don't think there's any way to make people pay. I don't think there's any way to make people pay more than what they think the game is worth. On the other hand, boy, do I really want to try and help people get past the idea that the way to win on Steam is to pay less than a fair price for the game. Like, I was guilty of it. I actually bought a game that I had on my radar for a while. Warhammer 40k Gladius. I was like, it's, you know, $10. Maybe I'll get, I don't want to play it right away. Like maybe I'll get lucky and have it on a lower price, because like there's a bunch of DLC for it, right? So I was like, maybe I'll just wait for a bundle or something. I was like, you know what, $10 is not a bad price to pay for an interesting 4X game. And why don't I just wait for the DLC to go on discount if I like it, right? But again, one sad side effect of me operating on Steam is that I no longer consider buying games at full price to sort of be the done thing. And I mean, like, obviously, it depends on where you're at. Because, like, the thing is that having now got access to a bunch of different subscription services, so, like, I like EA Play, and I now have Microsoft Game Pass because I got an Xbox. It's really weird to get into console gaming, but I kind of like it. It's neat to get that perspective on sort of the experience of gaming, because it's really different from what I've had before. Oh, I'm mad about that. I'm gonna try and save it for a heal. No. Damnation. That was careless. Okay, back to full health. But the subscription services have let me play some more games sort of on release. So, you know, like, I don't mean to badmouth waiting for a discount too much, because in a lot of cases it makes a lot of sense. Like, if you've got a big library of unplayed games, like, who exactly are you helping by amassing more, you know, more stuff that you don't play? I mean, maybe you're helping out the developers, but, like, if you want it, like, you can also just donate money. So I'm just trying to clear out the riffraff. Oh, that's a pity. I was hoping to get a sneaky heal in, but... Oh, nuts. Yet another reset. There we go. But one thing I'm really beginning to appreciate is that a game on release day is a very different object from a game like a year after release. Like, I'll probably still pre-order Civilization, because I really like Civilization. And, like, I know Civilization a few years after release is going to be better because it's got DLC and stuff. But I really like Civilization. And sometimes, you know, playing Civilization 6 again when there's a Civilization 7. I know most people who play Civilization just wait a really long time before playing the new one. Something that I definitely think Firaxis has put into their pricing schemes. But it is, like, neat to, like, grow with the new Civ. I also think it's a little bit easier to learn how to play the game that way. I really wish I could get this fourth mask, but I don't want to sabotage myself if I can avoid it. Oh, nuts. I kind of knew that shot was coming. I just thought I'd be able to dodge it a little bit better. Okay. So, healing is a priority, but it's a very delicate part of the run. All right. But yeah, anyways, I don't know, like, there's a lot of, when you look at the sales information, there is actually a lot of really interesting questions that you can ask about it. But the thing is that this is the fun part of doing projects. You can think a lot about how you react, whether or not your experiences are comparable to other, you know, other consumers on a storefront. What's the outcome that you're looking for? Because the biggest thing here, like, a lot of this is just a question of identifying what the state of the world is. Like, most people who are going to be in a position to give me data are not going to be large enough games to sort of set a new standard. So there's a debate going on right now about whether or not AAA games are going to see an increase in terms of the price, and whether or not that's quote-unquote right. You know, like, let's face it, in terms of the indie space, there is, by the way, if you notice, there is actually an increase in terms of indie games, right? So, oh, here's an interesting experiment. Here's going to be how I try and demonstrate that. Without looking, in US dollars, anybody who wants to participate in this in chat, how much do you think Slay the Spire, that deck-building roguelike, how much do you think that costs on Steam? I also know I haven't been very coherent on this. I'm trying to regain focus, both in terms of the game, but also in terms of the topic. Obviously, I also know people like lurking, so I may not get any answers to that. But even if you're lurking, I encourage you to put this thought. Listen, like 15 bucks or something. I will answer the question, but I just want to see. Olaf guesses 25. I'm also trying to think of some other indies that have come out recently. I'll tell you what, I'll answer this after the Elder Who fight. The other, like, a couple of the indie examples I was going to think of was like Valheim, or Satisfactory. But I think the thing about those ones is that, especially because they're 3D, people tend to recognize them as like a higher value product. This is a real shame about 2D games because, like, obviously Hollow Knight probably takes more effort than some of these 3D games to create their appearances. So I'm in Canadian by default. So let me just see here. Price. Slay the Spire. I hate that SteamDB gives me the first one. The guy who runs SteamDB is a dickhead. I don't mind saying that. All right. Actually, Olaf got it perfectly. $25. But like, this is the thing, right? When you take a look at indies like that, you don't think. Actually, you know what? Another good example of this, because it's a card game, would be Ancient Enemy. So this is by Grey Alien Games, who does games like Shadowhand and such. And I think Ancient Enemy is probably closer to something like $15 in that. But like, this is the thing, right? When you look at a game like Slay the Spire, you, particularly because you know it's indie, like, you have this idea in the back of your head as to how much that game is worth and what a general indie price is. Oh, actually, here's another good example. Griftlands. I actually don't know what Griftlands costs. Oh, that's interesting. Griftlands is $15.99, so Slay the Spire is actually somewhat more expensive than its peers. That's interesting. But yeah, like, this is the big thing for me, is that if you actually take a look at like new indie games coming out, particularly from companies like No More Robots, they are, I think, quite aware of the fact that indie developers have been underpricing their games for a really long time. And the fact of the matter is that having a higher price for a quality indie game has not actually prevented these games from having success. In fact, if anything, the ones with higher prices have sold better, because ultimately they are giving value for money, right? You could get... okay, so if I were to put out a game with a $30 price tag, nobody would buy it, because I'm not a game developer, and whatever I do for the first time, like, let's face it, if I ever make a game, well, okay, other than, coming along for the ride with Valiant Cheese on Supply Chain, or like whatever special credit, like, obviously I've got like a special thanks on a game too, and like there's a cup. My number of video game credits is now no longer 0. But suffice to say, I did not have like any kind of creative lead on any of those projects. The fact that thing is priced high does not mean that people are going to pay that. What it does mean, though, is that those developers were able to communicate the value for their game and that when people looked at the value proposition, they didn't turn away and say, "Oh man, I'm not paying that much for that experience." They looked at it and said, "Yeah, I'd be willing to spend $30 for a bounce fighting game or something like that." And again, like in some cases, this is going to mean that, like in some cases, the way that the value is being hey, Dozer Trouble. One of the ways that this is going to be realized for indie games is not necessarily the fact that people are not going to buy the game on a discount. What is probably going to happen, though, is that when people do buy it on a discount, the discounted value that they buy it at is higher than what they previously would have. And more importantly, people who just want to play the game right away are going to pay that higher price. Essentially, just sort of the floor is being raised. And generally, I think that's a good thing, because like there was definitely got the feeling that there was a bit of a race to the bottom for a while. And I'm not entirely sure that that's like the thing is that I like a good deal as much as the next person, but if it's not economically viable to make an independent game, then effectively what you're waiting for is the EA Originals program to just open its doors to so many more creators, because that's the only way that you can actually make any money making indie-style games. If the answer to people saying is like, I want to do something interesting and creative and I'll focus on a niche, and the response to that is, I'm never going to spend more than $5 on such a product, then that means you're not going to see niche games. Or at least niche games that, have a certain amount of ambition in terms of their production. The other thing I'm interested in is whether or not independent games are actually able to raise their prices in a way that AAA games can't. So for instance, we've been seeing, again, I would love to have access to historical price data, but apparently the only people who have that will only give that to people who are like names. So like if I ever become famous for something, I think I'd be able to get access to that data, but if you're just someone who's trying to do sort of public research, they're not interested in talking to you. They're actually quite rude to you. What would be a really interesting story, right, is in one sense when you talk about indies, is the competitor for a game like Hollow Knight Horizon Zero Dawn, or is it something else? And to a certain extent, developers recognize that there is going to be a tremendous amount of hesitation to see the base price for a AAA game be anything other than the number we've seen essentially since Oblivion first came out. I think Oblivion might have been one of the first that was at the current price point. So there's something really interesting going on if these independent games are actually able to exercise a little more flexibility in terms of setting their prices. Usually this just implies that they've been, either been too low or, something else is going on in terms of their ability to, make a claim on your hard-earned dollars. But unfortunately, we're not, that could just be an anecdote. It could actually be that the overall price for independent games has gone down over time. And I'm just, taking a subset of things that I kind of think are interesting. Better than you in every way, really? Because I'm currently getting clobbered by the collector. I'm really trying to get the heal in. No! But yeah, no, that's another one that I'd really love to work with. Again, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it without historical data, but being able to see if there is some ability to do, to exercise some pricing power. Because this is, okay, here's the biggest argument that you have for indies being able to raise their prices in a way that AAA isn't. A lot of really big games right now are sort of live service games. So they're games that are getting a constant stream of updates. You know, the new Call of Duty game takes a lot of space on your hard drive. And you can kind of make these arguments that if you have things like uncompressed audio, that's freeing up resources. So you don't need to dedicate computing resources to decompress them. Instead, those can go into, you know, some marginal improvements in terms of graphics quality or physics or whatever. But another big thing is that it does a really good job of crowding out other games. And so to a certain extent, when a new AAA game comes out, one of the things that they're trying to do is sort of dislodge your current hobby. So like, if Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out, you know, they want you to stop playing... well, they want you to stop playing Grand Theft Auto because it's the same company. But, you know, they do want you to stop playing, like, Call of Duty. That's not true when Hollow Knight comes out. Like, so in this case here, right, like if my outside option is to play this game that I'm already really satisfied with, it may be that they're not able to... it may be that sort of the outrage that comes out of raising the price, because let's face it, when that happens, the gamers are going to be intolerable. What did I get hit by? I'm assuming it's a bee, but that's really frustrating. Yeah, for sure, Dozer Trouble. And Binding of Isaac didn't quite have the same impact on me as other games, but I think we were talking about this last stream as well, which was it's a game clearly made by people who really love The Legend of Zelda, and I never really played any of those games. And so there's an entire set of assumptions in terms of what you should know going into that. So like the idea of looking for darkened pots and like secret rooms and all of that, that was like totally foreign to me when I was playing that game. And I got to appreciate it a little bit better when I understood some of those references. A little bit like Hollow Knight and sort of Metroid-style games. Hollow Knight, I think, does a better job of introducing you to the dynamics of these types of games in a way that I think Binding of Isaac didn't for me. But the really important thing here, right, is that, you know, I don't really think Hollow Knight's challenge is convincing people who really like Call of Duty to stop playing Call of Duty. I think the question is, do you want to have this experience at this price? And I think, especially as word of mouth becomes a thing, people are a lot more willing to say yes to that. And yes, even if that price is like $30. And again, it's not that people aren't going to be buying the game at 75% off, or, you know, it's not like people aren't going to be looking for a deal. I just think that this mentality that, you know, people will never spend more than $10 on an indie game is something that's actually led to a lot of independent developers underpricing their game. And I think at least the publishers that are getting some experience in being able to see exactly how people make decisions based on prices, I think they're sort of doing pricing that's a little bit more consistent with reality as opposed to this sort of assumption. I don't know, like, I guess basically we've been, as a consumer, like, I've kind of been able to rely on the fact that I think some developers who are pricing their games in the back of their mind have this sort of imposter syndrome that says, you know, I should just be happy that people are playing my game. And obviously that leads to a bunch of pricing decisions that are very different than someone saying, is like, look, it took us a couple years to make this thing, and we gotta pay the rent. Obviously here I'm chasing the heal, although I kind of blew that one. Oh man, did I blow that one ever? We're not at the end, but we have to be really careful. I'm gonna try the heal. Ah. There we go. You'd say Hollow Knight's better than Binding of Isaac? I mean, the other thing too is they're just so different. Like, I can definitely see people who wouldn't necessarily care for Hollow Knight who would really like the Binding of Isaac. It's kind of like saying that, you know, Into the Breach is better than Gone Home. Like, obviously Gone Home is a very, very different experience from, like, Into the Breach. Or, you know, like, one's a strategy game, the other one is sort of a more narrative focus. You know, it's a little bit more about kind of going on the journey as opposed to overcoming challenges. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I'm getting more out of Hollow Knight than I got out of Binding of Isaac. I really like to try Binding of Isaac again. My impression is that that style of game doesn't quite hold the same appeal to me as, like, a gamer. And that's fine, because, like, obviously, being able to play different types of games is what it's what makes indie games interesting, right? You know, not everyone is necessarily really gonna like Lucifer Within Us. But I will also say, like, I'm trying to think of a lot of games that have, like, okay, so a lot of people really like L.A. Noire. I think Lucifer Within Us does the detective thing in a much more interesting way than L.A. Noire. And obviously L.A. Noire had a Rockstar budget behind it, whereas Lucifer Within Us is made by, you know, Montreal-based developer who I think relied on government funding to actually get the project done. I think it was called Chronocyte when it was when they were looking for the CMF funding for it. Its last update recently? Interesting. I should take a look at it. Because it's really hard to see the bees here. There we go. Called Repentance. I know there's been a couple of DLC that have been released for the, like, Binding of Isaac Rebirth. I think I might own one of them. But the funny thing is that I haven't really put a lot of time in the base game. One more. Oh man, that was bad. Yeah, I mean, I think like Binding of Isaac has a really clear art direction behind it, but I definitely think like Hollow Knight is definitely about exploring the world. It's definitely about building atmosphere and presenting things in little fragments. It's a little bit like, I know the Dark Souls connection is, it definitely well understood and talked about. But again, like, you do get a certain investment in the world based off the fact that you sort of need to work to understand what's going on. And obviously, when I sort of complain about Binding of Isaac not necessarily being all that clear in terms of what's expected of me as a player, it's like if you haven't played Legend of Zelda, you may not quite grasp the mechanics in the way that somebody who has played one of those games is. I mean, like, that's totally fine, right? Because I'm assuming what's happening here is that it's a generation of people who grew up playing certain games, who are now sort of reimagining those games, right? It's basically something that's like saying, I really enjoyed playing this as a kid. Kind of growing up and making a game on their own. But that also means that someone like me who hasn't had those similar experiences is going to have... Like, there's going to be some work that needs to be done in order to sort of bridge that understanding. Maybe I'll get lucky? Nope. Oh man, that was really bad. Oh, I did not know that it had a card game. Sorry, I'm gonna try and sip on some tea. Sorry, I know I'm kind of like just rambling on and not making a whole lot of sense, but part of this is just me trying to keep awake. I'm just gonna take a minute to stretch. But yeah, like in the end, I think one of the things is that Hollow Knight, both Hollow Knight and The Binding of Isaac present me with mysteries. There's like hidden things, or there are non-obvious steps that lead to discoveries that are part of the core of the game, really. And I think that the big difference here is that for Binding of Isaac, I really got the impression that I had to do homework to sort of be able to appreciate that in Isaac. And again, that might have changed, right? Like, I'm basing this off of my first reaction to a game that is a few years old, right? Like, I'm pretty sure I was in Vancouver when Binding of Isaac came out. Sorry, I got an itchy nose. The highest tier is $800? But yeah, so I think the difference here is that it seems to be that one of these things about these Metroid-style games is the obviously exploration, overcoming some of these obstacles based on finding special artifacts and whatnot. And I feel that the game did a fairly good job of sort of bringing me on board in terms of that dynamic. It let me discover things, and it definitely made me invested in the world and exploring it. So again, you might say that there's sort of a homework aspect to this as well. But the homework was within the game, and I was able to sort of say, it's like, okay, I get what this game is expecting of me. Sorry, again, I didn't quite get the itch. I don't have any like Kleenex nearby, so I'm sort of like just rubbing the sides of my nose really vigorously and hoping that it goes away. It's an external itch too, so I don't know if Kleenex will change it, but it's we're not getting that one though. You're getting the full collection $100 tier. Man, I had no idea that Binding of Isaac was so expensive. Like I could imagine like a $60 tier for like super fans. I had no idea that like there was that level of dedication. That's a real shame that I wasted those souls. T-shirts and I can understand merchandise. It's actually something I'm a little surprised more indie games don't do. Is more like obviously some game like so I don't know like I really like Shadowhand. I suspect Shadowhand probably didn't sell well enough to justify like merchandise because obviously it like costs something to build inventories and whatnot. But I don't know. I feel like there's more indie games that probably could have some kind of merchandising than there actually are. I remember at a Twitch meetup, Clay had like a table just full of like there was everything from like Beefalo plushies, Beefalo being creatures in Don't Starve. So I'm getting really distracted. Again, just sort of feeling fuzzy. But... Oh, nuts. Oh. Nuts. Okay, it's gonna be tricky for a little bit. That's a clear up one. No way. That's a shame. Actually, based on what Dozer Trouble's saying, again, I really apologize for all of these little side things that I'm doing, but I need a second to. I think I just need a second to clear my head. I might actually just stand up and get a bit of a stretch in. But I'm curious now. So how are they doing this thing? What do you mean? I was born on January 1st. Okay, fine. I'm born on the 1st of January 1900. That's somehow more believable than me being born half a year ago. So I'm guessing these like higher